Art Snackers, welcome to Hot in the Shop. This is a series where we take a closer look at some wonderful products available in the ArtSnacks shop. In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 DIY card designs that feature hand lettering. Now, if you're like me, hand lettering is a little bit scary, but I promise you, the style that I'm going to show you in this video will be easy to catch on to. But first, if you're new here, my name's Jenny, and I'm a mixed media artist. When I'm not on the ArtSnacks channel having a blast with their art supplies, you can find me at artfullylivedlife.com. For all the cards I make today, I'll be using the Fabriano Medioevalis stationery set. It comes with 20 cards and matching envelopes. All the cards have these elegant decal badges, and they all come with pre-scored fold lines, so no measuring. I love it. Well, stick around till the end of the video because I'm going to tell you how you can get all the supplies I'm using today for 15% off. Let's start off this card making session with a happy birthday card. We'll make the greeting interesting enough so the words are all we need on the front. I happen to have a ruler that is about 1 inch wide, and I'm using that to eyeball in some guidelines with the Cretacolor Fine Art Graphite pencil. The word happy will go on the top line and birthday will be underneath. To create the letters, I'm going to use the KINGART Pro Coloring Brush Pens Nautical set. We'll wind up using all 4 colors for this card. Starting with the lightest blue color, I begin to mark in each letter. I'm not getting too fancy here. I'm just sticking with printing in all uppercase, and I'm not really down for doing a lot of measuring, so both words will begin along the left side of the card. I'm taking advantage of the brush tip on this pen and I'm pressing into the paper as I create the downstroke for each letter. Then I use a light pressure on all the upstrokes and on all the horizontal pieces. This is a style of lettering that I really like, and it's my go-to for presentation purposes. I've actually practiced writing happy birthday in this style long before this video. Please do not get frustrated if it doesn't work out right the first time. It is pretty easy, but I still suggest practicing and playing around with your own style. When it comes to the word birthday, try to keep each letter tall and thin so you can get them all on the line without the end looking squished. If you're not crazy about freehanding your letters, you can lightly sketch in the guidelines for each letter with the pencil first. I was surprised, but you can actually erase pencil marks pretty easy from this paper, even if the ink from the pens is layered over it. Now that we have our letters inked into place, let me show you a little trick I have up my sleeve that will upgrade the look of any style of hand lettering. What do you need for this trick? A fine liner. Yep, that is it. I'm using a Winsor & Newton 0.5 fine liner in the color sepia, and I'm just gonna outline all of my letters. I've noticed that I have a little more line control when I draw from the bottom left to the upper right, so I'm angling the card so I can outline the pieces of each letter as straight as possible. The width of this fine liner is perfect to do this with. Any smaller tip and your lines can look a little wiggly. Also, be careful of any intersecting lines and allow space for them. But that is it. Already your card is looking great. You could stop here if you wanted, but as I stated before, we're going to use all of the colors in that brush pen set, so let's go. I'm giving the bottom half of each letter another layer of light blue. The stroke starts at the bottom and then I'm flicking my wrist up at the end about halfway up the letter. It's beginning to look darker, but let's keep going. I use the same technique to add in the mid-tone blue, but it's a shorter stroke so it ends before the second layer of light blue ends. These colors do dry slightly lighter. If you guessed that we're going to add the darkest blue to the very bottom, you're correct. Let's give these letters the appearance of lifting off the page by creating a shadow using the last color in the Nautical pack. Now, I don't seem to get too creative with where I'm imagining my light source is coming from, so they always seem to be coming from the upper right, so the shadow I'm creating will be to the left and bottom of each letter. That first pass of gray is pretty light, so you might need to go over it a couple times. Here is each stage of the card. You can decide how far you want to take it. For the next card, we're going to make a floral design that is easier than it looks. We're going to start with the light pink pen from the KINGART Pro Coloring Brush Botanical set to make some roses. Now hear me out. Making roses with brush pens really just consists of making a bunch of C-curve marks. Make one small C-curve with the tip of the brush pen, then another going in the opposite way, then make C-curves around those two that get bigger as you go out to represent petals. With each C-curve, start with a light pressure at the tip of the brush pen. Then press down so the belly of your brush pen is on the paper. Then lift back up to the brush tip. This technique is very similar to how you make a loose watercolor rose. It's just modified for this brush pen. You might have to practice the look a bit, but you'll get the hang of it. I placed 2 roses that were in full bloom on opposite corners. Then I gave them each some simple buds. I used the light green in the Botanical set to make a few bigger leaves right in front of the main flowers. I'm using the brush strokes to create the shapes of the leaves. Remember that with water-soluble markers, the color will get darker with every brush stroke you overlap. That can lead to a streaky look, or you can use it to your advantage and create depth in your leaves. In contrast, I'm taking the darkest green and making some smaller leaves on a stem by drawing them in, then filling in the color. Colored pencils are great for adding depth and details over pens and markers. Here I'm using the very smooth and creamy Caran Luminance colored pencils. First, I use a little burnt ochre for shading the leaves, and then the dark phthalo-cyanine green for the veins. The pink-white goes over the dark green leaves to add a little bit more interest. Really, I'm just playing around though. The Caran Luminant pencils go over the ink and paper like a dream, so it's fun to experiment with that combination. Then I darkened up the roses a little bit with the pink brush pens because I simply cannot leave anything alone. Okay, now we can add a quick thank you sentiment to this card using the same basic lettering style I showed you in the first card. I cut a strip of paper down to be about a 1/2 inch wide, and again, I am just eyeballing the placement here. Using the light green, I write in the words thank you. But this time I'm using the Luminance pencil to outline the letters. It's a lot more subtle than the fine liner, and it's consistent with supplies we used in other parts of the design. For our third and final card, we're going to create some cherry blossoms on a branch for a nice spring look. But let's do more watercolor type painting this time. I began by scribbling both pinks into wells on the Alvin Heritage rectangular plastic palette. Then I picked up the ink with the Derwent push-button waterbrush to apply the color to the paper. I'm using mostly the lighter pink color for the petals, and I'm making loose 5-petal blooms. You might have noticed that with each flower, I'm dropping in some of the darker magenta color into the centers while the petals are still wet. This creates a beautiful paint blooming effect similar to what you can achieve with watercolor paints. I realize that it looks like I'm just putting all this in willy-nilly, but I did practice this beforehand, so I'm looking at my own reference for flower placement. You can lightly sketch in your blooms in pencil if that will help. While I'm waiting for the flowers to dry, I lightly sketch in branches with my pencil. Then go back and darken each flower with ink right out of the brush pen. The sepia Winsor & Newton fine liner that I used before pairs perfectly with these pinks, and of course it naturally works to represent the branches. To finish this off, let's add the word hello in the bottom right using the same lettering techniques we've used throughout this whole video. Handmade cards will always have a certain charm you just can't find at a store. Your friends and loved ones will appreciate the time and thought you put into making something for them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. All the supplies I've used today can be found in a link in the description box below. And to get 15% off these select products, just use coupon code HOT15 at checkout. While you're here, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe for more videos, join us for free over on Mix, and follow ArtSnacks on social media.